We got the story from the Daily Mail. Seattle cops made up sightings in radio transmissions of armed Proud Boys to scare autonomous Chop Zone protesters listening in, but sparked even worse riots. That's the big story. That apparently there were several officers, and during the Capitol Hill occupation, when the far left took over this area of the city, the police falsely called in armed Proud Boys gearing up for an attack or something to that effect. This resulted in many of the protesters who had guns getting armed, and then ultimately what ended up happening, these individuals opened fire, unleashing around 300 rounds into an SUV, killing a teenager because they thought the Proud Boys were going to attack them. I want to talk about this news, but I kind of have no choice but to address what happened last night when we got swatted live on Timcast IRL. And I've put out different messaging, tweets, really trying to give you guys the full context of what we know so far. And because, putting out a social media post one at a time, not everybody sees it. I put out a video on Instagram. I'll break down everything we've learned so far. And then I will, get into this, maybe get into the story about the police in Seattle. Now, I don't like talking about drama and what goes on, here. I like to make sure that the content I produce has something to do with your world, with the bigger picture and how it affects you. We talk about policing, we talk about Joe Biden, we talk about the Republican Party, Ted Cruz, things like that. And a lot of people want us to talk about drama and internal politics, internal workings. I don't think that's relevant to you guys. I don't think that matters too much. But considering what happened last night and the questions surrounding it and the disparate messaging, I want to kind of bring it all together and address it here. And the reason why I do so with this story, I'll be honest, when I pulled this story up, I wanted to do a segment on the Seattle police and this hoax they implemented, which I believe did result in people dying, or at least in one teenager dying. And I'm like, you know what, man, this is very similar. This is like a cop version of swatting. They call in that Proud Boys are armed, and then what happens? The far left overreacts and opens fire, and that's the fear of staging these hoaxes. So let me tell you what happened. Last night around 8:51 p.m., we do the Timcast IRL show from, we start at 8, we end at 10, and then we record a members-only segment after the fact. At 8:51, the door to the studio, which is to my back right, opens up, and I see two cops. One cop walks in, walks past the camera. Luke was talking about unrest following pandemics, which we never got back into, which would have been important. And the cop walks around the studio with a flashlight and walks out. He didn't check the other rooms or the bathroom or anything. I don't think these cops wanted to be here. And I was just like, as soon as it happened, I was like, the cops just walked in. Like, what happened? And Brandon Tatum was on the show, and he's a commentator and a former police officer, said, did y'all just get swatted? And we did. Swatting is when someone calls the police and says something extreme happened, so the cops are forced to show up with a ton of people. Here's what people don't know. A lot of people who are watching the show just thought it was a couple cops, because when I walked out of the room, I see two cops with flashlights, and I'm like, there are two cops there. I don't know what's going on. And so a lot, that's why I'm saying, like, the disparate messaging has been kind of an issue, and I want to wrap it all together. No, there was probably, I don't know, man. We have footage outside. There may have been a total of 8 cops. I believe there were 3 different jurisdictions involved in the swatting that came to the house. There were about 8 vehicles, and yeah. So I'll give you the gist of the story. And we did put up the vlog over at youtube.com/castcastle. So that's what happens in the studio. The cops walk in, they walk out, and then I'm like, what just happened? Lydia, who's the producer on the show, says, we just got swatted. I said, how do you know? How do you know? And she's like, I've got them people texting me. And I'm like, okay. And I got up and I went and talked to the cop. I didn't want to talk to the cops. I didn't know what they were doing in my home. We do not allow anyone enter the house without permission, and that includes police officers. And I'm really pissed off about this. And this is what I really want to address. It's a tough issue. But so then I go back in, sit down on the show. Brandon mentions, I don't think this is serious if there's only 2 cops. And I'm like, that's a really good point. If the cops really thought that, something bad had happened, why would there just be 2, regular, like, officers in uniform just walking around flashlights? And so I went down. I saw, I think at this point, 4 cops maybe more, maybe 5. I was like, they just started coming down because they were searching the whole house. And then I was just like, you know, with respect to what you guys are doing here, I would appreciate it if you guys leave. I don't agree to a search or anything like that. So what had happened was someone called in at 8:20 and said that a man named Nicholas Bell had killed 2 people and was going to harm themselves. The police responded and got here within 7 minutes. Wow. I thought it was much longer than that. At 8:27, the police were in our driveway. We're really lucky. And I want to drive this point home. Our chief technical officer, Andy, had walked out of our green room, which leads straight to that driveway. And there was an SUV with lights on at the bottom of the driveway. Andy was just like, I don't know what this is all about. So he just turns left and starts walking away. He was going to our the garage where we have the skate park. He was going to skate while we do the show. And then he decided to like walk over and he walked back and take a look at what was going on. And that's when we have on the security camera footage, the cops are basically like, put your hands in the air, tell him to put his hands up. And he does. And then we have Brett, who hosts the Pop Culture Crisis show and is also a filmer. He walks out and he's holding this big gimbal. Now, the next thing that happens is, you know, they put their hands up and they begin speaking with, this is a state trooper in an SUV talking over, it might have been an LRAD device, a long range acoustic device, because they said it didn't sound like a megaphone or anything. It sounded clear. I'm like, may have been an LRAD or of some sort. If you've never experienced a long range acoustic device, it's pretty crazy. It's like a loudspeaker, but it sounds like they're standing in front of you and they could be hundreds of feet away. This moment was crucial. I see a lot of people posting that it was just a couple of cops. It was no big deal. It actually was a big deal. We saw in the driveway, I think, 8 vehicles, but we also now find out later that you actually had we actually had a bunch of cops and different agencies or different jurisdictions driving down the road, doing perimeter sweeps around the area and going to other people's homes. If Andy was not outside, inadvertently intercepting the state patrol vehicle, the cops would have come in guns a-blazing. However, I think we're lucky in this capacity in that this is a place of business, not just some home. If this was just like my house and I was just some guy who like put a studio in his backyard or garage thing or basement or attic or something like that, then the cops would have probably kicked the door in while we were doing the show and told everyone to get on the ground and cuffed us and all that. However, because Andy was outside and because Brett walked outside, this state trooper, he sees these 2 guys already. The call makes no sense. The call was that there was one guy here, that he had harmed 2 people, he had killed 2 people, and that he was going to harm himself. And they see these 2 guys in the parking lot, and we have a big parking lot, and we have a bunch of cars because this is an office. So then Allison, COO, and my girlfriend comes out. And, they all start talking, and there are like 8 or so officers in the parking lot. And I'm learning about this after the fact, mind you, because this was at 8:27. All right. So now it's like 8:31 or so, whatever the timestamp is. And they're all talking in the parking lot. And we're doing the show. We have no idea this is going on. So Allison tells them, this is not true. None of this is happening. And you cannot enter the property without a warrant. And they said, we understand, but we have exigent circumstances. I don't accept that. Look, I mentioned this in the show, and I understand this. The cops end up walking in the house. They go along with Andy, our CTO, and they start going through all the rooms, and they open up the studio door. And Andy was telling them, like, guys, they're live right now on camera. Like like he's showing them the live stream. Like, you can't go in. The cops are like, we have to do a wellness check, a perimeter check, or whatever, a property sweep. And so they open the door, and that's when they walk in. That's when we see them. This is tough. It's a rock and a hard place. I respect that someone put in a phone call that people here were hurt. And these officers rushed down here not knowing what to expect and believing a real possibility they could die. And that's the reality. And that's a scary thought. I can't imagine what it would be like if I was, I got a phone call. Actually, no, you know what? I've experienced this. I have absolutely experienced this. I'll keep the details, private, but me and some friends got a call from our friends, one of our friends' girlfriends. We had an apartment. They were at an apartment, and a frantic, panicked call that someone was trying to break in and they were scared. And we're like, what do we do? What do we expect? And we had to rush there full speed, speeding, being like, they called the police. Hopefully we get there in time. And by the time we showed up, the cops were there. But I couldn't necessarily imagine. I mean, it's different. I don't know. It's probably different. You've got a loved one whose life is being threatened. You might be a bit more worried about their safety. And we rushed in. Fortunately, in that circumstance, everything was okay. But something weird did happen. And so in this instance, you've got all of these cops being told there's an armed man who's killed people. And they have to go in and try and stop this person. And they don't know what to expect. And so when the state trooper pulled into the driveway, they were waiting for backup. And we are lucky. This is a place of work. And so we've got so many different employees by happenstance. Andy's standing right there. And then they're like, they see this dude and they're probably thinking, this is the guy. This could be the guy. So they're like, put your hands up. And he's like, he puts his hands up. And then they're like, walk forward slowly. And they start driving up. Brett comes out. This is what's scary because he's holding a gimbal. He's holding a large camera. They can't see. It's dark out. And so we're lucky. This could have been really, really bad. Let me tell you, if they weren't outside and backup arrived and they did a perimeter around the house and they came in with their guns drawn, during the show, we tell people, feel free to get up and use the bathroom. We're even live, like no joke. And you guys probably don't even notice. Seamless because we're pros. I'm being somewhat facetious, but no, we do a good job. So literally, Lydia handles the cameras and we have a soundproofed, for the most part, bathroom in the studio, and you've probably never noticed it. When someone gets up, Lydia just makes sure the camera isn't on the person who's getting up to go use the restroom. And sometimes we'll mention, we had one person on who was like, can I go to the bathroom now? And we're like, yeah, just go and do it. You don't got to say it. Now, Ian doesn't want to get up and walk around to the studio bathroom, so he leaves the studio to go to one of our other restrooms. Not to give too many private details, but in doing so, Ian runs full speed down the hall to make sure that he's being as fast as he can when people get up from the show, because I got to go. Hey, you got to go. And it's a long show. It's 2 hours, right? So sometimes you got to go. Ian was saying, like, he actually was about to get up and go use the bathroom. I don't necessarily, want to play this game of like, what could have happened? But I want to mention this because I think we were lucky. And I think our security protocols, we've discussed these circumstances, so we know how to deal with it. But if we didn't have someone out there and the cops came in with their guns out thinking that this is a murder scene, a murder-suicide potential, and then they go upstairs, the lights, it's dark, and they see Ian, this long-haired, guy, running down the hallway, what do you think could have happened? And that kind of thing worries me. And not only because, like, no joke, it's a big property, and so you've got a long dark corridor. We don't have the lights on all the time. We've got just like dim lighting so you can see where you're going. And so I'm just thinking, like, what if Ian comes out of the studio and runs full speed to go use the restroom, which it's a normal thing he does. People mention all the time, like, yeah, he bolts out. He tries to use the restroom as fast as possible because we're doing a show. What happens if the cops are doing that sweep? And they have their guns out and they see this dude running down the hallway and they stop. And Ian has no idea what's going on. Who are these people? He doesn't know they're there. Could have been shot. Could have been, wasn't. We didn't get to that point, and I'm glad we didn't. And there's also the fear that if it was minutes later, when we had those 8 officers starting to walk around the property, and Brett comes out, and he's got his camera out, and they see this dude walking towards them holding this large black object, a camera, but you can't tell what it is, and he's pointing it at them. Who knows what could have happened? We've seen these circumstances. You get one panicky cop and they freak out and they see it and they're like, no. And then they start shooting. And I don't blame them for being scared, but maybe they shouldn't be out there if they're going to be scared and fire. I would like to imagine that the immediate response would have been like, on the ground, drop it now. And then you've got to realize what that means. These camera rigs are expensive. Now I'm glad nobody got hurt. But could you imagine just like not even the worst case scenario is someone loses their life or gets injured. But then we still have to contend with the fact that this was an attack on us. If someone was out there holding the camera and they say, drop it now, what are you going to do? Are you going to be like, I'm going to slowly put it? No, you're going to throw it and you're going to drop it. That can cause damage, not just to our we're not just putting our lives in, they're not just putting our lives in danger by doing these calls, but they're also just damaging the business and causing us very serious problems. So I don't know, man. I hate to do like a 20th video on this, but during the show, I see the cops. I get out and once I realize it's a swatting, I go talk to them because, initially we're wondering, like, when the cops walk in, we have no idea why they're here. They could be executing a search warrant. Who knows? I have no idea. And I'm not going to talk to them, not without a lawyer present. So I'm pissed off about this. And then when they said it was swatting, I went out and I was trying to be very careful with my words because you got to be very careful. That's why I said to them, and you can see it in the vlog, I respect you guys coming here to try to save lives, but I would appreciate it if you would leave. There's a concern that if I said something like, I appreciate you guys being here, or I'm thank you for what you're doing, would be considered to be some kind of acknowledgement or approval of them entering my home without permission. I understand exigent circumstances, but I have a real problem with this, that they just entered my place of business where people, admittedly, some people live here, but it's not that kind of place. There's only a couple people who do because we have like on-site camera for the vlog, so we were able to film a lot of this. But to be able to come in here without a warrant, citing exigent circumstances, I'm calling BS, and I am very, very unhappy with this. And there have been people who responded and be like, a warrant, Tim? Are you nuts? The cops have to go in. Like, no way, dude. Statist BS. I choose my risks. I choose that. My people choose that. My friends, my family, not the police. I respect that they were like, we have to go in and potentially save lives. And in the event someone does try to come in and cause us problems, I certainly understand and respect that they would try to save my life. And the last thing I want is for there to be like a boy who cried wolf scenario. And then the cops, don't want to come in and say, it's probably fake. We're not going to go in. And then we get really hurt. But I have a problem with all of this. I really do. I'm sorry, man. With respect to those who would risk their lives, it is not their call. When 3 people are outside, and someone recorded the police scanner audio where they say, this seems to be a swatting. They're filming a political show inside. And, I want to do a wellness check anyway. Right then, I say, get off my property. You have multiple people saying this is not true, and they would still come in without a warrant. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. I don't care who you are. You can't just come on my property. The problem I have with this is we got lucky that someone was in the parking lot, that Andy had walked out there and Brett had walked out there, intercepting the officers with their hands in the air, walking slowly towards them. They got the brunt of the police fear, and it was minor. It was, okay, the cops quickly figured out. But if they didn't, if they weren't out there and the backup shows up and there's like 8 cops outside, there's state troopers, there's a sheriff's department, there was I don't know exactly know. I think there was another city police department that had showed up as well. I can respect and understand that they're rushing to the scene to try and prevent something tragic or stop someone who's crazy. I get it. But at a certain point, this idea of exigent circumstances, your rights have been voided because someone called in a lie. If they showed up and they didn't see anybody, and so they have backup and they pull out their weapons and they go up and they open the door, they wouldn't have had to break it in because, well, let's just say they did. Let's just say sometimes we do have everything secured depending on who's working at the time. So let's say they would have busted our door in. Absolutely. They would have opened the door. They would have kicked it in, busted it open. Then they'd go through the property armed. And it's a big, I got to tell you, this place is kind of a labyrinth. People get lost here. I'm not kidding. It's if you've never been in a building before, you might not know where things are. And it's not like an office building that's very straightforward where it's like door goes straight, then you go left and right, there's a hallway. No, it's a big house, but we use it as an office. I don't like the idea that they get a phone call that there's one guy who harmed 2 people and they encounter 2 guys in the parking lot telling them this is not true. They then encounter a woman who says, you cannot come in. This is not true. And they say, we're going to do it anyway. At a certain point, exigent circumstances should not apply. And what? The cops can then just be like, Somebody called in and said a bad thing happened, and now we get to enter your house and sweep the perimeter. Even when I came out and said no, they were like, well, we have to check. No, you don't. No, you don't, man. I'm not okay with this. So look, I didn't get into the full details. You know, I mentioned the Seattle cops making up this Proud Boy thing. Maybe I'll just do a bigger segment on this so I can actually get into all of that. But I'm starting to read this story, and then I was just like, I gotta talk about what happened with the swatting, man. We're gonna find out who did it. We're getting all of that in motion. We're talking with lawyers, and I'll just put it that way. We are very close to Washington, D.C. So there is a lot of very powerful security interests in this area that have already been freaking out. You got to understand, man, when we had a sitting member of Congress on the show the night before and something like this happens, it raises a lot of very serious alarm bells. And when we have people running for governor and when we have high-profile political personalities and celebrities, and look, I'm not saying the show is always that, right? No, we have the occasional high-profile personality, and we just had a sitting member of Congress. So when something like this happens, there's very real concerns about this. Could this be in any way related to the fact that it's fundraising season, that it's campaign season, and we had a member of Congress on, a particularly contentious one, or that we had someone running for governor on? Could there be someone on the left maybe who's like, this Tim Pool guy is platforming these far right whatever and allowing them to fundraise? Because you better believe when people come on and they speak their opinions, they're able to raise money. Yeah, that's on them. Like, they're allowed to do it. And we have people like Bannon. We had Marjorie Taylor Greene. We had Carrie Lake. And there's got to be a lot of people who are unhappy with that. This raises very serious red flags. So we'll see where it goes, but I'll tell you, it sounds like some very serious security interests are going to start digging into this. So whoever did this is going to be, I'll just put it this way. Particularly involved individuals have said they believe this is going to be resolved. And, they said, we're not going to, they wouldn't tell me exactly how, but this was going to be resolved, and they were going to figure out who did this. And it's I love the conspiracies, the insane people on the left and the right, no joke, left and right, claiming that we faked this or something. Yo, I don't address drama. And there's an opportunity to do all of that, and I avoid it for the most part, because there are certain circumstances, like, with the rugged man thing, I addressed it. And that was namely, like, I wanted to talk to my sister about our upbringing and kind of give you guys a background on our past. But for the most part, we don't do it. We don't play that game. I don't want to talk to you about what's going on in my house. I don't want to talk to you. I don't think you care for the most part. We have a vlog for that. The vlog is where it's like, if you want to, and it's relatively a few people watch that relative to like this show. No, I want to talk about what's going on in Seattle. I want to talk to you about freedom, liberty, laws, polls. And so I'm not interested in any of that. So the insane conspiracies, it's just absolutely absurd. I didn't want to do a segment on this. I pulled up the Seattle thing, but, just getting messages from people who are just now finding out what happened, not seeing, because I put out like 5 tweets, then I put out an Instagram video, and people aren't getting the full message because it's all split up. There's the vlog, but the vlog just shows a bit of what happened. It doesn't give you a full explanation or my thoughts and everything. So let me just say this, man, as it pertains to what the Seattle cops did. This is the problem of crying wolf. They say this, and then we have this. Let me show you this tweet from Jack Posobiec. Jack tweeted, "When I was in Chaz, the checkpoint guards kept talking about reports of an upcoming Proud Boy attack. We now know it was a police hoax. This triggered all these leftists to open fire on an SUV and kill a teenager. What could have happened here could have been really, really bad." And man, when the cops walked in, we didn't freak out. We were calm, and everyone's like, it's not even a big deal. That's only because this is a place of business, and we have staff who intercepted inadvertently the officers before they came in. It's fortunate that whatever happened at a point where we've actually grown a bit larger than we were in the past. If this happened a year ago when we had less employees, we only had like 3 or 4, cops would have kicked the door in with their guns out and told everybody, get on the ground, and that would all have been live. See, I think the people who swatted us didn't realize this. There's a lot of people. I saw a message. Someone was like, "How does Tim Pool afford to have so many employees in this big compound?" Yeah, we're a big company, and I don't know. I don't mean big in like a number of employees. We have a big show. We generate a healthy revenue. We have high-profile guests. You better believe we have people walking the grounds. You better believe we've got a receptionist. We have someone who sits at a desk at the front door for deliveries and when people show up. This is a business. Now, whoever did this probably just thought we're a rinky-dink small basement operation or something like that. They didn't realize. So when it comes to what happens in the studio, all you see is a cop walk past. Imagine if they swatted the Daily Wire or Blaze. Yeah, it's not going to make it into the studio other than you might see the cop and they'll be like, what just happened? Because there's layers of security. Well, we're going to be beefing up our layers of security for sure, but we have decent security here and we are armed. And we're lucky, man. We got lucky. If someone had tried pulling this off again, like a year ago, it probably would have been a lot worse. But we take security very seriously. We have cameras everywhere. We have cameras. We have hidden cameras. We got it all on footage. We got all the footage of it, of them walking around, everything. So I'll just wrap up with, we're taking it very seriously. We are getting our legal people on this to get body camera footage, to get everything we can, the police report, the phone calls, the phone number. Apparently, it seems like it may have been a local number. One of the officers asked the dispatcher, was this a local number? And they're like, we're checking. And so it may have been. We don't know. Maybe not. The reason he was calling is actually, no, I think that's probably a stupid thing to say. It's probably not a local number. It could be easily spoofed. Who knows? So hopefully we get this resolved. But let me just say, to whoever did this and to everybody who's concerned about bringing this person to justice, they pissed off some well-connected individuals. We aren't the biggest podcast in the world. We're not the biggest show. But we are in the we're effectively DC Metro. Okay, like we're less than an hour outside of Washington D.C. If you're right in the middle of Washington D.C., like the capital ever, we're about an hour away. But if you're in the peripheral area, we're 45 minutes or so. So it's the people who live out where we live, the people who live nearby, the people who had cops go to their home. These are DC lawyers. These are DC lobbyists. That's the area that we're in. The West Virginia Panhandle, the Harpers Ferry area, and the tri-state, this area is where all of these DC political individuals go around. And right now, people are pissed off. I'm not a big fan of these people, mind you. So we're moving a little bit more westward with our studio. But let me just say, this swatting impacted the other properties, and let me tell you, they're not happy with it. So what I'm hearing is that you've got a lot of well-connected, angry people who said, we will find out who did this. Everybody's okay. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see y'all then.